I'm here at Jack Gunter Art and Design on Camino Island with my friend Jack. And I'm going to put a totally unanticipated question to him. Hi, Jack. The question is this. Terence McKenna, when asked what he thought the whole point of evolution was, said, a good party. How would you answer that question? What's the point of it all, mate?
I can answer that in lots of ways. My simplest answer is that I once worked in a project as a scientist for finding the world's first superconducting material that lived at room temperature, an organic superconductor. And the theory of this class I took was that if there was a superconductor at room temperature, at body temperature, it would explain the human soul. Because we are a collection of molecules, billions of molecules doing reactions all day long, stuck in our skin. And what chemical reaction makes that molecule become conscious, become sentient? There is no chemical reaction that can cause sentience. And the theory that we worked on when we did these experiments was, if there is like something in the cell wall that's a superconductor at room temperature, that would give you 1 + 1 = 3. And the third number would be the soul. The third number would be consciousness. And so we
This is called Trinitarianism in the Christian charism.
Could be, I don't know.
Yeah.
So I really think that our human beings, and I think all life, is covered with a superconducting material, maybe at the molecular level on a cell wall, that gives you that, there's a word I can't think of right now, the result that
self-reflection, consciousness.
Well, consciousness comes out of the fact that there is no reason for this to become a third level. And I think a superconductivity going on within cells of all creatures.
Does that suggest a purpose, Jack? And one of the reasons that we've been going for 3 minutes. So, does that suggest a purpose? Can you come up with a conclusive thought?
I just think it explains the human soul. It explains all souls. And I think it's the answer that no one can see, because it comes from nowhere. And I am still amazed that I am a sack of protoplasm filled with chemical reactions, expressing air that I just breathed to another sack of protoplasm. And the air that I express makes sense to the other sack of protoplasm.
And how does it relate to all the ecstatic art that you create? I mean, you're one of the most prolific painters and artists I've ever encountered. You're like a music head, but with a paintbrush. How does it explain that?
When I create a painting, I start with a black board, which is like the void, and I paint 5,000 white dots on this black board. And then at that point, I paint random colors, and they have to be random, that fill the whole surface full of random different colors, which have the white from underneath shining through them. And so now I've created chaos. And my purpose as an artist is that I create a thin layer of reality over the chaos that people see as a painting. And if I do it right, you can see right through that thin skin into all the chaos underneath. You can see it up there in that sky right there, Nick. Just look right up there. I paint over those colors.
You're such a local artist, mate. It's extraordinary.
Well, it's a local scene, but it's still chaos underneath.
Yeah.
And I paint a thin layer of reality over the chaos that people look at as a painting, but subliminally they are seeing the chaos. And that painting vibrates and it screams unpredictability. And so every one of my paintings, if I do them right, has this unpredictability inside the painting coming through to the consciousness of the viewer. And the people are amused by them. They like them. They like the fact that the painting vibrates in a way that they can't understand.
You know, I sort of find a similarish experience when I'm, you know, symbolic geometry is a big thing for me, and it's like my desk when I'm doing symbolic geometry is a chaostrophe of pencils and compasses and paints and mess, even as on the paper itself there's this extraordinary precision. And I've always felt and seen and experienced that precision is not me putting stuff down on paper, but basically brushing layers of reality, of veils away, and allowing this extraordinary interior harmony of chaos to reveal itself into, I think Abraham calls it radical immanence, beauty, the numinous dimension sort of showing itself.
Well, I have been criticized lately by a dear friend for living in a mess. And my cabin and my studio is a certain amount of chaos in there. And my theory is that there's a conservation of energy, where if I start with a blank board with no information, and I create information onto that board, which will allow someone to actually see something in it and experience it, then the conservation of energy suggests that if you create order out of chaos, there has to be an equal amount of chaos created in its wake to balance.
You know, it's interesting. I remember when in the aftermath of my first divorce, when I was sort of trying to make sense of what had happened, it was when I first really began to turn towards inner reflection in earnest. And I picked up a text by John Cleese, the famous Monty Python, and Robin Skinner, probably one of the most highly respected family therapists in the UK, a text, and picked up a text of theirs that they co-authored that's become a standard classic textbook in psychology for the last 2 decades. And one of the things that Skinner impressed upon me is that in their research that they were doing about not so much what makes dysfunctional families as functional families, what they found was that tidiness in a house had fuck all to do with the correlation in terms of how sane people were. In fact, one of the happiest and healthiest houses they ever found was a complete chaostrophe of messiness. I think they might even have had a hole in the floor in the living room or something. And I think that ultimately is probably what you and I celebrate. It's the glorious messiness, chaostrophe, spontaneousness, letting go of things.
You know, Einstein, actually, I read this yesterday. Einstein was once quoted by saying, "Great creativity and great brains come with a messy desk." What does that say about a person with a clean desk?
Let's leave it there. All right, we are 9 minutes and 30 seconds into things. Jack, it's been fucking glorious spending time with you. We don't do it often enough, but thank you, brother.